Greetings, this is Reverend Yue McCormick of True Vow Temple. In this presentation, I will discuss the practice of Shodai, chanting the title, which is the primary practice of Nichiren Buddhism. The most important part of any Nichiren Shu service is Shodai. Shodai is a word composed of two Chinese characters. The first, Sho, on the left, means to chant, while the character on the right, Dai, means title. Shodai is a Nichiren Buddha's practice of chanting the title of the Lotus Sutra. The second character in Shodai is also the first character in the word Daimoku. The second character of this word, moku, in classical Chinese can also mean title, so as a compound, Daimoku means title. Sometimes we will say O Daimoku instead of simply Daimoku. The first character, O, in this word is an honorific. It is sometimes pronounced go. It is the same character used in the word Gohonzan. Odaimoku or Daimoku can be translated as sacred title or august title. Saddharma Pundarika Sutra is the original title of the Lotus Sutra, a sutra discourse attributed to Shakyamuni Buddha that originated in India. The translation into Chinese made by Kumar Jiva in the year 406 of the Common Era would be pronounced Miaofa Lianhua Jing. Myoho Renge Kyo is the Japanese way of pronouncing these 5 Chinese characters. In English, the full title is The Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma. Myoho is Saddharma, the wonderful Dharma, that is the truest, most refined, and most subtle Dharma, or teaching of the Buddha. In the Ichidai Shogyo Tai, outline of all the holy teachings of the Buddha, Nichiren Shu wrote, regarding the word wonderful of the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma, the great master Tiantai declared in his profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra, wonderful means something mysterious, absolute, and beyond expression. The Lotus Sutra is called wonderful because it is the hidden teaching of the Buddha, and it is named so because the sutra is the supreme and ultimate Dharma that is like nectar. As for the Dharma, Tiantai's profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra states, the Dharma means the law of provisional and true teachings with 10 realms and 10 suchnesses. It also says, the Dharma is so named because the provisional and true teachings are not separated from each other as the ultimate truth. Renge is Pundarika, the white lotus flower, which has been a symbol of the blossoming of purity and spiritual awakening in Buddhism from the beginning. In the Ichidai Shogyo Tai, Nichiren Shu wrote, the meaning of the lotus flower is explained in the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is the simile of the provisional and true teachings. Flower is applied to the provisional, and lotus to the true. Putting the two together, the provisional and true teachings are one as the lotus flower. It is also stated, it shows the true result of the eternal Buddha and reveals the non-duality of the provisional and true teachings. Kyo is sutra, which literally means thread of discourse. In this case, the discourse is the Buddha's ultimate teaching that all beings can attain Buddhahood, and that Buddhahood is unborn and deathless. Therefore, it is at work in this moment and every moment, in this place and every place. In the Ichidai Shogyo Tai, Nichiren Shu wrote, Great Master Zhang'an says of the word sutra in the second prologue of the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha's voice teaches the way to Buddhahood, which is called a sutra. The Daimoku of Nichiren Buddhism isn't just the title of the sutra. It is a mantra that expresses our devotion to the Lotus Sutra. So Namu is added to the title. Namu is the Japanese pronunciation of the Chinese characters used to transliterate the Sanskrit term namas, which means devotion to, homage to, putting absolute faith in, or taking refuge in. In a letter to a follower, Nichiren Shu referred to a discourse in which the Buddha said, Namu means to be surprised and awakened. In another letter he wrote, whenever we pay reverence to gods or Buddhas, we begin with the word Namu. What does Namu mean? The answer is that Namu is a word from India. In China and Japan, the equivalent would be Kimyo, to entrust one's life. To entrust one's life means to dedicate one's life to the Buddha. So the practice of Shodai, or chanting Odaimoku, means to chant the 7 characters Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, which means devotion to the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma. Chanting the Daimoku, or title, of the Lotus Sutra is not something that the Lotus Sutra itself teaches. However, there are occasions in the Lotus Sutra where the Buddha emphasizes the great significance of the title. According to the Buddha, even to encounter only the name of the Lotus Sutra is a rare and precious opportunity. In chapter 14 of the Lotus Sutra, he tells Manjushri Bodhisattva, "In countless lands, even the name of the Lotus Sutra cannot be heard, much less can it be seen, received, embraced, read, and recited." Further on in the Lotus Sutra, in chapter 26, after the female Rakshasis offer Dharanis to protect the practitioner of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha says to them, "Good, good. Were you able only to protect those who receive and embrace the name of the Lotus Sutra, your merits would be beyond measure." So we can see that upholding even the title of the Lotus Sutra is something rare and praiseworthy, according to the Buddha. For Nichiren Shonin, the Daimoku is not just the title of a Buddhist scripture. In the Sandai Hiho Honjoji, transmission of the three great secret dharmas, Nichiren Shonin identified the Daimoku with the 5 categories of profound meaning. The Daimoku which I, Nichiren, recite today in the latter age of degeneration is the Daimoku of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, which, unlike that of the previous ages, is not merely the practice for personal enlightenment, but is also the practice for benefiting others. This 5-character Daimoku is not just a title of the Lotus Sutra. It contains the 5 profound meanings of the name, entity, gist, function, and teaching. In Kanjin Hanzansho, the contemplation of mind and the focus of devotion, in his comments on the parable of the excellent physician in chapter 16 of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren Shonin identified the Daimoku as the good medicine of the excellent physician, who represents Shakyamuni Buddha, the core of chapter 16 of the Lotus Sutra, and again with the 5 categories of profound meaning from Great Master Tiantai's profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra. He wrote, "Now, then he sent home a messenger to tell them, 'Your father has just died,' refers to the bodhisattvas who sprang up from the earth. This good medicine refers to Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, which is the core of the duration of the life of the Tathagata chapter, and which contains the name, entity, gist, function, and teaching of the Lotus Sutra. The 5 categories of profound meaning that Nichiren Shonin refers to are the 5 categories that the great master Tiantai used to interpret sutras. The full name of the Lotus Sutra is Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma, but here the name is referring to the Buddha's discourse on the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma, which transcends any scripture or set expression. The Lotus Sutra that we have in Sanskrit, or in Chinese or English translation, is named after this transcendent discourse, and is just one particular expression of it that is appropriate for our time and place. The entity of the Lotus Sutra refers to the true reality of the middle way, taught in the perfect teaching. Gist refers to the sutras conveying the cause and effect or causality of Buddhahood, particularly of the eternal Buddha's Buddhahood, which is unborn and deathless. Function refers to the power of the Lotus Sutra to actually benefit all sentient beings by bringing them to Buddhahood. Teaching refers to the way in which the Lotus Sutra brings together the goal of all the Buddha's teachings. All of this, Nichiren Shonin taught, was conveyed by the 5 characters of the Daimoku. To chant the Daimoku is to keep all this in one's mind and heart and to express it verbally to others. In another passage from Kanjin Hanzansho, Nichiren Shonin states the following about the Daimoku. The 2 dharmas of the causal practices and virtuous effects of Shakyamuni, the world-honored one, are perfectly contained in the 5 characters and the title of the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma. When we accept and uphold these 5 characters, the merits of these causes and effects are naturally transferred to us. This 33-character passage is known in Nichiren Buddhism as the passage of upholding and transferring. The passage of natural transfer, or simply the passage of 33 characters. This passage is sometimes recited before the chanting of O Daimoku in Nichiren Shu services. It expresses the key principle of Nichiren Shonin's teaching, that those who faithfully accept and uphold the Daimoku will naturally receive all the merits of the causes and effects of the eternal Shakyamuni Buddha. Nichiren Shonin also saw that O Daimoku as the seed of Buddhahood. In Kanjin Hanzansho, he states that the seed of Buddhahood is established based on the Tiantai doctrine of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, the teaching that all reality is present in a single moment of awareness, and that each and every phenomena, such as a single moment of awareness, pervades all of reality. It is by realizing this that one can attain Buddhahood. He wrote, "Nonetheless, according to that which is explained in the sutras, Without the seed of Buddhahood established on the basis of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, the attainment of Buddhahood by all sentient beings, or the use of the two types of images, wooden statues or portraits, as foci of devotion would be vain talk without reality. Nichiren Shonin saw the Daimoku as the eternal Buddha's way of conveying the realization of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment to the ordinary people of this age, people who are not scholars or full-time monastic contemplatives. Towards the conclusion of Kanjin Hanzan Sho, he wrote, "For those unable to realize the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, the Buddha arouses great compassion, wraps this gem within the 5 characters, and directs that it be hung upon the necks of the childish in the latter age." If the Daimoku is a metaphorical gem containing or conveying the realization expressed in terms of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, then did Nichiren Shonin also see the Daimoku as the seed of Buddhahood. In fact, he stated this explicitly in Kanjin Hanzan Sho when he compared the teaching of the Lotus Sutra by Shakyamuni Buddha in the past with the present spread of the Daimoku. The Lotus Sutra, culminating in the 1 chapter and 2 half-chapters, chapter 16, and the latter half of 15 and former half of 17, that were taught in the past, is likened to a harvest of those who are ready to attain Buddhahood, while the present propagation of the Daimoku in the present latter age is the sowing of the seed of Buddhahood in people's lives. He wrote, "The teaching of the original gate during the lifetime of the Buddha and that given at the beginning of the latter age are one and the same in being pure and perfect, except that the former is the teaching for harvesting the fruit of Buddhahood, while the latter is a teaching for sowing the seed of Buddhahood. The former teaching consists of the 1 chapter and 2 half-chapters, while the latter consists only of the Daimoku of 5 characters." In a writing called the Shishin Gohon Sho, The 4 Depths of Faith and the 5 Stages of Practice, Nichiren Shonin makes several significant statements about the practice of the Daimoku. To begin with, he identifies the practice of chanting the Daimoku with a single moment of understanding by faith, and also the stage of rejoicing. Beginners should refrain from giving alms, observing the precepts, and the rest of the first 5 bodhisattva practices, and for the present should instead take up the practice of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, which is the spirit of the single moment of understanding by faith and the stage of rejoicing. This is the true intention of the Lotus Sutra. The importance of a single moment of rejoicing or a single moment of understanding by faith is based on 2 statements made by Shakyamuni Buddha in the Lotus Sutra. The first term is Ichinen Zuiki, the single thought or moment of rejoicing. In the Teacher of the Dharma, the 10th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha says, "If in my presence any of them hears even a verse or phrase of the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma, and has a single moment of rejoicing, I will assure him of his future Buddhahood, saying to him, 'You will be able to attain unsurpassed, perfect, and complete awakening.'" The second term is Ichinen Shinge, the single thought or moment of understanding by faith. In the Variety of Merits, the 17th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha says of those who accept his teaching about his attainment to Buddhahood in the remotest past, "Those sentient beings who hear the Buddha's lifespan is so long, and give rise to even a single moment of understanding by faith, will attain merit without measure." The term understanding by faith is a translation of the Sanskrit word adimukti, which can be translated as determination, resolution, or zeal. Basically, it means a firm confidence that leads to understanding and a determination as to what to do. By identifying the practice of the Daimoku with a single moment of rejoicing and the single moment of understanding by faith, Nichiren Shonin is describing to us the internal practice of the Daimoku. By chanting the Daimoku, we are not meant to be simply paying lip service to the Lotus Sutra. We are expressing our joy and deep confidence in what the Lotus Sutra is telling us about the universality and immediacy of Buddhahood. In the same writing, Nichiren Shonin explains how the Daimoku is used to bring to mind all the teachings of the Lotus Sutra. The 2 characters in the name Japan bring together all 66 provinces with all their people, animals, and wealth, without a single exception. Likewise, don't the 2 characters for India bring together all 70 of its countries? Miale says, as a summation of the whole sutra, the entirety of the Lotus Sutra is included in the Daimoku. He also says, by way of summary, the 10 realms or 10 suchnesses are used to indicate the entirety of the 3,000 realms. Bodhisattva Manjushri in the Venerable Ananda Use the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra to indicate the entirety of the teaching of the Lotus Sutra in 3 assemblies over the period of the last 8 years of the Buddha's teaching, and to indicate that this is what they meant. They began the sutra with the words, "Thus have I heard." Finally, in Shishin Gohon Sho, Nichiren Shonin explains that the Daimoku expresses the intent of the Lotus Sutra, and when we chant the Daimoku, we will receive its spiritual influence and harmonize with that intent. Muddy water has no mind, but it still catches the moon's reflection and naturally becomes lucid. Plants and trees catch the rain to blossom, but can we say they do this deliberately? The 5 characters Myoho, Renge, and Kyo are not the text of the sutra, nor a mere explanation. Rather, they are the sole intent of the whole sutra. Beginners may practice this without knowing the heart of the Lotus Sutra, but their practice will naturally harmonize with its intention. We should also look at Nichiren Shonin's statement in Kenbutsu Mirai-ki, Testimony to the Prediction of the Buddha, wherein he identifies the Daimoku with the practice of never despising bodhisattva in chapter 20 of the Lotus Sutra. Here, Nichiren Shonin makes it clear that the practice of Daimoku is meant to express a profound respect for others, in recognition that all beings will be able to attain Buddhahood according to the Lotus Sutra. He is just like never despising bodhisattva, who in the age of the semblance, after the death of powerful voice King Buddha, spread in the land of that Buddha the 24-character passage in the Lotus Sutra, chapter 20, saying, "I respect you deeply, I do not despise you." Why is this? It is because you all will practice the way of bodhisattvas and will be able to attain Buddhahood. With such propagation, the bodhisattva was severely persecuted by all the people in the land, who beat him with sticks and threw stones at him. Although the 24 characters of never despising bodhisattva differ in wording from the 5 characters which I, Nichiren, spread, they are the same in meaning. In Shohoke Daimoku Sho, a treatise on chanting the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren Shonin makes it clear that he intended the Daimoku to be the main daily practice, with other practices like reciting passages from the Lotus Sutra and various prayers, and even the contemplation of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment as auxiliary practices. Next, regarding the daily practices, the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra should be chanted, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. If possible, a verse or phrase of the Lotus Sutra should be read respectfully. As an auxiliary practice, one may say a prayer to Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of many treasures, the numerous Buddhas throughout the universe, various bodhisattvas, 2 vehicles, heavenly kings, dragon gods, the 8 kinds of gods and demigods who protect Buddhism as one wishes. Since we have many ignorant people today, the 3,000 existences contained in one thought doctrine may be difficult to contemplate from the beginning. Nevertheless, those who wish to study it are encouraged to do so from the start. In Hokke Daimoku Sho, a treatise on the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren Shonin states that chanting the Daimoku is the essence of the essential. Other practices are wide or abbreviated ways of practicing the Lotus Sutra. It is the wide practice to uphold, read, recite, and defend with delight the total of the Lotus Sutra, consisting of 28 chapters and 8 fascicles. It is the abbreviated practice to uphold and keep the important chapters of the Lotus Sutra, such as skillful means and the duration of the life of the Tathagata. It is the essential practice to chant only the 4-phrase verse of the supernatural powers of the Tathagata chapter, or the Daimoku, or to protect those who do so. Of these 3 kinds of practices, to chant only the Daimoku devotedly is the essence of the essential. Note that in this passage, Nichiren Shonin specifically mentions chanting the skillful means and the duration of the life of the Tathagata chapter as examples of an abbreviated practice, but they are not the essential practice, let alone the essence of the essential. In Jiso Sho, a treatise on the 10 chapters of the Great Calming and Contemplation, Nichiren Shonin explains that the Daimoku is the practice of the perfect teaching that all people should recite, though in this Gosho, written in 1271, before the Sado exile, he also encourages the wise to also contemplate the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. What we should chant all the time as the practice of the perfect teaching is Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, and what we should keep in mind is a way of meditating based on the truth of 3,000 existences contained in one thought. Only the wise practice both chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo and meditating on the truth of 3,000 existences contained in one thought. Lay followers of Japan today should recite only Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. As the name has the virtue of reaching the body for which it stands, When one chants Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, one will not fail to receive all the merits of the Lotus Sutra. In the Hoanjo, Essay on Gratitude, written in 1276, Nichiren Shonin explains to the monks of Seichoji Temple the three great hidden dharmas: the Honzon, or focus of devotion, the Kaidan, or precept platform, and the Daimoku, the original gate of the Lotus Sutra. Question: are there any dharmas that Tiantai and Dingyo have not yet propagated? Answer: yes, there are. Question: what are those true dharmas? Answer: there are three. They are what the Buddha bequeathed to those in the latter age of degeneration, namely the true dharmas, which masters such as Kashyapa, Ananda, Ashvaghosha, Nagarjuna, Tiantai, and Dingyo did not spread. What do they consist of? Answer: the first is the most venerable one, or Honzon. All the people in Japan, as well as the rest of the whole world, should revere the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni of the essential teaching as the most venerable one. That is to say, the most venerable one should be the Buddha Shakyamuni and the Buddha of many treasures in the stupa of treasures. Their attendants should be the other Buddhas standing outside the stupa, and four bodhisattvas such as superior practice bodhisattva. The second is the precept platform based on the doctrine of the essential section of the Lotus Sutra. The third is the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra. All the people in Japan, China, and everyone in the whole world, regardless of being wise or foolish, should chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, single-mindedly forgetting everything else. In this explanation, written after the Sado exile, Nichiren Shonin seems to have dropped his encouragement to contemplate the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, and is insisting that both the wise and the foolish should chant Daimoku single-mindedly. Was this just rhetoric, or was he trying to discourage any other practice? Perhaps he realized that any discursive practice, such as conceptually thinking about the doctrine of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, cannot compare to directly seeing the true reality of all things, while calming and focusing the mind on the Daimoku. Perhaps those who consider themselves wise believed they were superior because they chanted and also contemplated the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, and Nichiren Shonin wanted to undercut such intellectual pride. He wanted there to be no divisions between those who were educated in Tiantai doctrines and had the time and ability to undergo strenuous, complex, or lengthy practices, and those who simply chanted the Daimoku with faith. At the same time, Nichiren Shonin continued to lecture on the great calming contemplation for his disciples on Mount Minobu, and continued to draw upon the teachings of Juri and Janran. It seems that he did continue to teach Tiantai concepts in a limited number of practices, but towards the end of his life came to emphasize the Daimoku alone as the decisive practice for attaining Buddhahood. When doing this primary practice, one need not, and perhaps we can say should not, do anything else but chant the Daimoku and be present with and in the Daimoku. Finally, we should keep in mind this guidance found in the Hoyo Shiki, the Nichiren Shu liturgical manual, which is in turn quoting the Raiju Giki, an earlier manual. It says, "The Raiju Giki warns against chanting Daimoku in a gloomy, lazy, or distracted fashion. Don't chant Daimoku with a scatterbrained or flippant manner. Chanting as if it were a hardship is folly, whereas chanting it joyfully is wise. The intention of our practice is to chant joyfully. It advises, as part of daily practice, we should chant it 300 times, each time mindfully, in a moderate tempo, free of distraction or drowsiness, but with a courageous effort. Finally, we should chant it 10 more times at a slower pace, with deep sincerity and clarity, so that everyone is focused and mindful of the Daimoku. In short, because chanting Daimoku is the main practice, we should chant it often with sincerity and mindfulness." In short, chanting the Daimoku, the main practice of Nichiren Buddhism, should be joyful, sincere, and mindful. With that, this presentation on the Shodai, the practice of chanting the Daimoku, comes to a close. I look forward to your questions and comments. May the merits of this talk on the Dharma extend universally to all, so that we and all living beings together accomplish the Buddha way.